Thank you for being here. I promised the last time that I will speak comprehensively on the economy today. However, I've decided against it. I will just point out a few things that support our contention that the economy is on the decline and that this government has no idea how to arrest that decline, that they have not outlined a plan for the future. In fact, they do not have a plan to stimulate job creation, investment flows, and economic expansion. And therefore, the trends that we have already seen will continue. So I want to just demonstrate using a few numbers this pattern. But before I do so, I must say that local government elections are going to be held shortly. And so the coalition has come to the realization that they will need people's votes now. So we have seen a flurry of activities designed to once again get people to support them. Simona Brooms has been going around in the city promising people grants, small grants in their communities, telling them they have $3 million to spend here, etc. We have seen once again large numbers of trips made by ministers with huge teams into the areas that are going to be contesting the general election. So Mabaruma, Letem, Port Kaituma, huge numbers, massive expenses from the state being used in their campaigning efforts. I was there in Port Kaituma the past weekend and I saw their flags already, although they flew in on a government trip with government resources. But we've come to expect that from APNU. I just see a sense of desperation. And this is because when they go out now, they've come out of their cocoon and they go, they're not getting the type of reception that they got in the past because people are worried about their daily livelihoods. And so they have brought out all of the big guns. What I see now is a coordinated attempt to once again polarize the country, make it about race, and I'm going to give you the evidence of this shortly about how this is happening. And they've brought in the figures, the Lincoln Lewis, the David Hines, the Adam Harris, the usual figures of the past from an era, an old pre-colonial era, and then along with some of the government officials, they are now pushing this line once again. So I'm going to take you through that shortly and show you how they are doing this. But before I do so, I must say something about the 3 years of this government in office. So I noticed this massive document that they did, Guyana on Track, a publication of the DPI. No doubt they've spent $10 million on this. And I want to, if people haven't had a chance to read this, actually, I just looked at it. And I had like really, if it wasn't so tragic, I'd just be, it's funny. So let me just leave it at that. They've had here, they said, 200 achievements, 200 plus achievements since they got into office. So the economy continues to grow. I'll come back to that one in a moment. New Guyana election chairman appointed. Now this is an achievement of the coalition government, that a new chairman, a routine function of any president, is suddenly an achievement of this coalition. But this is the first chairman who, in 25 years, who's been appointed in violation of the Constitution and 25 years of common understanding between the two parties. Yet, this is an achievement. The establishment of 3 new towns on paper. On paper. Nothing has changed except in more taxes for those people without any consultations with them. Distribution of 300 home improvement subsidies. 300 in 3 years, 100 per year home improvement subsidies. This is a huge achievement. Number 120, address squatting. So that's a big improvement. We don't know what it means, but this is a huge achievement. Number 128, free transportation for school children. Now, I pointed out how this government in 3 years took away over $5 billion in the transportation subsidy for the children. It's 1.6 billion a year, 1.67 billion a year, multiplied by 3 will give you over $5 billion. That's the grant, the 10,000 grant. And they have supplied about 20 old buses with Granger's name on them. And that's the free transportation for children. They have successfully hosted historic level 1 archery coaching course. This is a big achievement of our government. We'd all go to bow and arrows now. Maybe we'd have to go back to the past. Actually, Sidney Alucock told the people in the Rewa River that they don't need guns. They have to go back to using bow and arrows. So maybe we're all training for this. Soon we'd see the police force getting bow and arrows walking around the city. They successfully, another achievement of 156, successfully hosted the Nationals at the Lenora Track and Field Center. Now, since I was a boy, Nationals been run. And this is suddenly an achievement, and I suspect the achievement is they hosted it at Lenora Track and Field Center, which was built by the PPP. So this is huge achievement. Another achievement, building renamed in honor of Stephen Campbell. Massive hard work on the part of this coalition government. Renaming a building, my God. Another achievement, the designation of Chinese Arrival Day, Indian Arrival Day, Portuguese Arrival Day. So I'm puzzled. Do we have 3 holidays now? Because they designated these 3 days. This is an achievement. I don't understand that one myself. A new drug procurement system being introduced. Never mind, we have massive shortages around the country. Unbelievable. Extended the land titling program to Amerindian. Not a single land title since in the 3 years in office. They had one they handed over that was done under the PVP. Not a single one. The prisons are being rehabilitated and expanded. So, huge achievement, but nothing about the 17 persons who got killed. We lost the entire prison in Georgetown. It was burnt out. Major criminal gangs smashed, members prosecuted. So I'm trying to find which major criminal gang has been smashed and members prosecuted. COI to bring resolution to Lindo Creek massacre. And whilst talking about the COI, I must say that this is turning out to be an assault on the Guyana Defense Force. This is an assault on our soldiers by this Granger government. Training foreign service workers. arrest treaty signed with Suriname. These are achievements of our government. A seminar held for people on corruption, successfully hosted the 46th conference of FATF, another achievement. They assumed chairmanship of the CFATF. That's a routine thing. It rotated by country, country after country, and that's a success, something by rotation. If that was the case, we hosted tons of things. We had huge successes. We had a Rio group meeting. I hosted all the heads here, etc. But that's a huge success. Restricted importation of pine wood, a huge success. They stopped pine wood coming into Guyana. I just need to go on. They resuscitated the manganese plant, which is not true. It hasn't started as yet, but it was signed by us. More items are VAT-free. A blatant lie. A blatant lie. They remove the zero-rated category from all the items, food items. A lie. Minimum wage increased by 50%, but they're not talking about the slew of taxes that they put on people. Then Trotman says, all measures in place for oil and gas in 2020. He says, all measures, we still haven't got the Petroleum Commission, no local content legislation, no sovereign wealth fund, no decision on whether they will auction the blocks, but all the measures are in place for oil and gas by 2020. A 4-lane extension of the East Bank Road. I thought that that was a PPP one. And then the Sheriff Street Mandela, we left the money for that, $64 million in a loan to do that and to continue these. It's 9,000 computers distributed to teachers. They came in under the PPP, they ordered it. It's a comic sort of thing, and it's wasting our money. They're so desperate, they're routine functions of the government. Now let's assess this government along four or 5 points. Jobs. How have they done with jobs? We have lost 25,000 jobs since they got into office. A fail grade for them on jobs. On crime, we have seen a spiraling of crime. So they got an F grade on that. After telling Guyana they had a plan to address it, and Granger saying once he received that report last year from a British consultant, crime was a done thing in Guyana. Like how they said that piracy, they had eliminated piracy. On taxes, so F grade here. On taxes, they get an F grade again. They've increased taxes along a whole slew, taxes and fees and poor people as well as the business class. They're collecting $56 billion more this year in taxes. On corruption, they get an F grade because there are tons of corrupt practices and incidents that we have pointed out and they refuse to address. We no longer use our procurement laws because what has happened is direct sourcing, government officials handing out contracts, etc. On the economy and their plans, they have a failing grade too. They're running down our reserves, the economy is declining. In terms of competence, just look at Basil Williams and you'll get the picture. And Pagwal, not, what's her name? Henry. And they will tell you what we're talking about. On young people, nothing for use. Look at those things. So competence F, economy F, corruption F. No, they should get a grade A for corruption. No, that's it. Grade A for corruption, that's the only one they get a great chance, the A for. Taxes F, crime F, jobs F, and young people, youth. That's what you should look at, not how many seminars you hold, and that Granger cut a ribbon somewhere. this is all that I have to say about this waste of that they put out as progress in the last 3 years. We have declined, we have retrogressed as a country. Now, I promise you to go through quickly the economy. And I just wanted to say that, just to support what I've said there before, that we're in total confusion too. So the minister, this is all for 2017. The minister said in the budget, for example, in the agriculture sector, would grow by 5% in 2017. When he presented the 2018 budget, he said it was 0.2. Then it was revised in February to 0.4. But then he's still saying the statement is compiled using data in February 2018 and may differ from the forthcoming audit reports of the central government and the Bank of Ghana. So we're going to have 4 sets of numbers for 1 year on the same issue and all at variance with each other. This is what makes it so difficult to debate the issues in Parliament, because they paint a rosy picture at the time of presentation, but then the economy, in the meantime, that has no bearing to reality in the economy. So let me just give you an example. Sugar was supposed to grow by 13%. It declined by 25%. That's nearly a 40% turnaround, 38% turnaround, worsening. Mining and quarrying, gold was supposed to grow, decline by 2.6, declined by 8.3%. And let me just say mining and quarrying overall. So agriculture, let me simplify all this because I'm going through too many numbers. They said at budget time 5% agriculture, fishery, and forestry will grow by. It grew by less than half of 1%, 0.4%, rather than 5%. So it declined in comparison to budget, their proposal. They said that mining and quarrying will grow by 0.7%, 1%. It declined by 8.8%. Manufacturing was supposed to grow by 4.3%. It grew by 4%. The services industry was supposed to go by 3.3%. It grew by 3.6%. So you will see that agriculture, fisheries, forestry, mining, quarrying, manufacturing, services, industries, all of that. That includes real estate, health services, financial services, transportation, retail, and trade. All either decline or remain stagnant. The only sector that performed was rice industry that didn't get any help from this government. It recovered from the past year production. And secondly, electricity and water grew more. Government services grew by a bit more, and that was it. That is the contributory factor. So the economy is in bad shape. Every sector has declined last year or remained stagnant. The major ones that generate jobs. And what was even more troubling, if you disaggregate the growth, when the small miners were supposed to produce 482,000 ounces of gold, their production fell short significantly to 419,000 ounces. So that affects small miners in a disproportionate area, in a big way. I'm now going to go through the balance of payment because that declined too. The monetary variables, you know, that were stagnant, and also the reserves. You've seen the declining reserves. So someone would say to me, why is the IMF, why did the IMF come and say that they expect better in the future? Now, I've dealt with the IMF for a very long time, for almost 20 years. So, let's look at what the IMF said, and look at the coded language here. This is their report. The IMF said that the mission supports the authorities' prudence towards private external borrowing. Now, we know that our government has indicated that it will borrow over $1 billion, $1 billion US dollars. That is 900 million from the Islamic Bank and 150 million that it claims through a bond. That's about $30 billion. So that's over $1 billion. They've already borrowed 100 million. That makes it they're doubling the debt. I don't know what prudence they're talking about. But look at what the IMF says at the last sentence. The mission stressed the importance of settling government balances at the Bank of Guyana, which will be achieved by the issuance of T-bills. It's telling you that this government is borrowing heavily, as we pointed out, from the Bank of Guyana to finance its expenses. It's effectively printing money. And the IMF stressed the importance of settling government balances at the Bank of Guyana. Means they have to pay the Bank of Guyana for the credit extended to them. And we pointed this out, I think it was in the media, that the credit that was given by the Bank of Guyana is tantamount to printing money. The mission says, scaling up public investment without addressing remaining shortcomings could undermine its effectiveness. So they're talking about this government big plan to scale up public investment, the bridge, etc., but no tender, etc., will undermine its effectiveness. The mission also recommended moderating spending increases and consideration of an expenditure review which could provide opportunities for safety net reform and more effective action on inclusive growth. And I suspect that this came about because we pointed out to the mission that although overall expenditure had grown significantly by this government, they're neither growth enhancing nor are they welfare inducing expenditure. And that you can significantly reduce public expenditure or reduce public expenditure or find resources within the current budget without increasing public expenditure that will support growth and welfare of people, without increasing the overall deficit or spending more. And so the IMF made it very, very clear. It speaks about public financial management capacity ahead of oil or production remain critical. The IMF also concludes that we have to study the oil and gas alternative, and maybe only if it's feasible we use it on the way to renewable. So you still have to come back. There is a recognition that gas-fired power plants is not totally renewable based on the definition of renewable energy and based on the commitments we made to the Paris Agreement. So I see now the government, after claiming they had finished, Patterson said they had finished the feasibility study for the oil and gas to land here. Now, yesterday or so, they took $1.7 million loan from the World Bank to do a study about whether oil and gas should come on shore. after Patterson claimed the feasibility study had been done. So if you need any more evidence of what's happening, you can get it just from these statements. You just have to read between the lines. The economy is on the decline, and there is no plan, not a single plan, to address this. So now I want to come back to what I started off with and why they're bringing out some of these paper. So let's start by making a few things clear and correcting some impressions that they have been creating. This government excuse for hiding the 18 million US that they collected from ExxonMobil is that the PPP did the same thing with CGX. I heard it mentioned in Parliament only last week. Well, that is a lie. The People's Progressive Party, neither the PPP nor the government headed by the PPP, received a single cent from Exxon and from CGX. CGX never paid a signing bonus. They didn't find oil, so how could they pay a signing bonus? They never transferred any money to the government to pay for legal bills. There was not a cent. Any expenditure they made was on their own books. Not a cent was transferred to the government of Guyana. That's a huge difference. In this case, ExxonMobil transferred $18 million to an account that is in the name of, well, the government of Guyana, but not paid into our consolidated fund in violation of the law. And the ministers have access to use the resources. So totally different. CGX never did. Secondly, you heard the questions I asked in Parliament. If the consolidated fund is not going to go broke in the short term, and the Bank of Guyana is not going to run out of foreign currency, why do they have to pay the bonus into the consolidated fund in dribbles? Why not just transfer it and do what you did last week in Parliament, come for an appropriation? They can't answer that question because they want to keep the money outside. They hid it there, they still think they can steal some of it. And that's the conclusion. And then I asked also a paragraph in the agreement. One of the clauses in the agreement says they have to report to ExxonMobil about this money. Now, if it was paid into the consolidated fund, they didn't have to do that. But once it's held in these accounts, they have to give reports to ExxonMobil. So they're prepared to give ExxonMobil reports that they're unprepared to give to the National Assembly, Parliament, or the people of Guyana. And so this is it's quite clear they were trying to steal the $18 million. It's as simple as that, US dollars. Secondly, I saw the debt ceiling in the last Parliament was altered. Now, the debt ceiling was raised in the past to facilitate a payment or a guaranteed issue by the government of Guyana to the Amila Falls project developer, the person who is supplying power, that should GPL fail to pay their bills, then the government of Guyana will pay on their behalf. So if they refuse to pay for the electricity they get, the government will pay it. The debt ceiling was raised for that purpose, only for that purpose. What they did last week in Parliament, surreptitiously at the last hour, after the Speaker had said the business for the day has been concluded, I packed up and I left. Then to realize that they passed a bill, they reopened the whole issue, they passed this amendment to allow now the 50 billion to be applicable to any loans that they take. Any loans that they take. I suspect that this is to facilitate the 30 billion that they plan to borrow through the bond, and maybe the bridge that across the Demerara River. Then Jordan, from what I understand, gave an extraneous explanation about how they're doing better in the interest rate on this bond, and we're not sure if it's a bond as yet, because they use the word bond and loan interchangeably, and they're different things, very, very different. So we're not sure as yet. But he says we had a lower interest rate. And look, they had than they had for the Marriott. Now, anyone would know that if you issue a government guarantee, then you will get a lower interest rate. But what Jordan has done by issuing a government guarantee, he has now shifted that liability in case of the failure of like in Marriott's case, in case of that failure Marriott's failure to pay the loan, service the loan, then the government will have to step in and service the loan. What would have happened is that the intention was to sell that project in the first case. So once you sold the project to a private developer, it was the private developer's responsibility to service the loan, not the government. The hotel assets would be used to collateralize the loan. So in case the private developer who owns the hotel in the future, once government sells it there and takes back its money, in case that person fails to service the loan, then the bank can levy on the hotel. Now he has brought it into the treasury. The loan was collateralized using the assets of the treasury, of the Marriott, not the consolidated fund. And this is like a simple explanation. I don't know if he doesn't see this. He has just exposed us to a huge liability again on the Marriott by taking over the loan and bringing it onto the treasury. And I suspect it's going to do the same thing for this the 30 billion facility that they're negotiating now. I want to make it clear there are two projects that we will look at extremely careful and how it's done. And we can't give guarantees on these. That is this one, the 30 billion, because we heard they collected an advance. We don't know how it's being spent. We don't know what assets are used to collateralize it. We don't know what the backroom negotiations are. So we have huge problems with this one. They have not defined even in the future how they plan to spend it. In fact, there is no board at Gaisuko until now. I don't know who is borrowing all of this money for Gaisuko, who's making that decision, and there is no board. And this next one is any loan taken for the bridge that we see is a corrupt project, totally corrupt project. We have grave issues. So I thought I'll put that on the record. The next thing is, let me put also on the record that our we're opposed to the parking meters being reintroduced, period. We're opposed to Vulcan signing any bylaw. We're opposed to any form of introduction of this parking meter with this company. If they want, they should restart the project through some transparent method. And then that would be more amenable. I'm sure people will have a greater comfort level. So I want to say that right up front, we're opposed to the parking meter being introduced. I want to take you to a couple of statements made. I told you about who they will bring out to enhance their arguments for local government again. So they can't point to achievements, as I just pointed out. In every sector, they are failing. So it is the corruption argument that will come up again, and the race argument. And who are the people who are going to stir up the corruption arguments again? It's the people they have in Sara and Soku. So we have seen the head or the deputy head of Sara, Mr. Rettimeyer, saying, I believe I can have a preference for a political party, but I can be unbiased in a professional sense. And that's true. And we never ask people which political party they voted for or they intend to vote for when we hire them. That's perfectly normal. But he and Clive Thomas have been the least professional of anyone that I've known in the public service. In fact, the method through which they were hired is a political method. They were handpicked. They're politicians handpicked by the Granger administration to head this body. Even when the law was passed, the SARA Act was passed, and a process was outlined through which new officers would be hired, they bypassed that process and put the same two persons there. They did not follow the professional path to hiring people for SARA. So they are politicians. And then just look at the statements they've been making. So Rettimeyer has been talking about PPP people stealing. He said, me personally, I'm salivating to get back into office for oil money. This is a professional, he's been doing his professional job. Clive Thomas then says 300 billion stolen under the PPP without a shred of evidence. They repeat the $28 billion a year. Every that's stolen through procurement fraud. So, having said that they're acting professionally, he then goes to say, people, for example, complain in another article that when the drug money was here, they used to get jobs. So this is a political statement. This is from News script, that drug money used to create the jobs. So they have not, but by how much I can't say. We'd have to find a way to quantify that. But it has been reduced. They don't know, they haven't quantified it as yet, but they know it's reduced. So I was wondering, with David Patterson's brother getting caught now in Grenada, whether that is a factor in the reduction too. That is a factor in reduction. And what are they going to say now? That the same AFC individuals who were accusing the PPP of being in bed with drug dealers They have it right in their home. So what are they going to say now? And I don't want to go back historically, but they've had other people in the same situation. And is it that the campaign, Mr. Noel Blackman, was also, or now is also, who contributed large sums of money to their campaign? He is now in prison for drugs in the US. So were their campaigns financed from drug money? Was the campaign they had financed by drug money? So, but you will not hear anything. So Retmire, it's not the drug money that was creating the jobs under the PPP. You had another 25,000 people working. They were working in sugar. They were working at Barama. 2,000 Amerindians who were fired were working, you know, in the government, sticking $700 million into their village economies. There was the retail trade on Regent Street was booming and across the country because the government was not taking $56 billion more out of people's pockets in taxes. If you go to Region 1, I came from Region 1 in the Mabaruma area, where there was zero collection of taxes because we took a policy decision that people who live in the outlying areas have a high cost of living. They now collect about $1.2 billion a year. They've just put the GRA and there's massive corruption. 1.2 billion sucked out of the economy of Mabaruma alone will cause hardships there. That is why people are losing jobs, because of the ineptitude of his buddies and his government. That is, they say, that's the reason, not because of the drug money, which they haven't been able to quantify, but they know it's reduced. And then saying that, they've shifted the numbers. He was speaking at a training course for GRA officials and government officers on corruption, and he said something like, between the years 2010 and 2014, some 35 billion was lost as a result of procurement fraud, while an overwhelming 100 billion was diverted to the underground economy. So now, it used to be 35, 28 billion per year. Now, between 2010 to 2014, it was 35 billion. They reduced the numbers now. And it was 300 billion for underground economy. Now it's coming down to 100 billion. They keep making up numbers all the time with no way of quantifying it. And somebody needs to ask them. We've asked Gulsaran, he's hiding up to now to try to quantify this. So they brought him out to stir up this thing. Oh, a lot of money stolen under the PPP. Ask him to check how much is being stolen now through procurement fraud. I can wager him that it is in multiples of 10 times, at least 10 times more. There's no procurement system in operation now. There's no procurement system. It's a free-for-all. Free-for-all. Billions being spent with handing out things to party people and to friends. You ask them. Ask Patterson, ask Harman, ask Trotman, ask them. What is going on? And so they brought him out to do a hatchet job. Already so cool. In fact, in Parliament, some of the ministers came to me and said, you know, we don't agree with the charges, they're frivolous, because I think they're very worried that if the standards were set so low, like here people were charged for not for selling below the valuation report, the valuation. The valuation, as we know, it's an opinion. Sometimes the market value, when you go out to bid, you get a price higher than the valuation or the lower. So now they know that this is a frivolous charge. Many of them have confessed to me, said they don't agree with it. So I say to them, why not drop the charges if you recognize that it's frivolous? But they say to me, that decision is not made at their levels, some of the ministers. It's made elsewhere. So clearly, SOCU will be directed to go after people, regardless of whether the charges will hold out in the long run. I think they just want to damage reputations for the local government. Then I want you to, they look at, the next person is David Hines. If you look at David Hines, last week he did a hatchet job on the PPP on May 6th. He said that the PPP, among other things, has not implemented in 23 years one policy that has benefited Afro-Guyanese. So on the May 13th, he sought to balance this. His balance is that he now needs to criticize APNU because he is above the board, and he is a fair and objective person. So the headline says the APNU plus AFC government and African Guyanese. After 3 years, no major policy initiative that targets black empowerment. So I read it and I thought he will now really go after the government for not doing anything for Afro-Guyanese. But in his article, he says the president correctly advises African Guyanese to get into business. Many African Guyanese villages and communities don't have markets, for example. Hence, there is little money circulation in those communities, saying that's the reason for people not getting jobs, because they don't have markets in their villages. You know, and money don't circulate because you don't have a market there. Excusing the government, successive PPP governments from 1957 to 2015 have failed to make black empowerment a priority, and I'm very certain that that attitude will not change anytime soon. So this is an article about this government failure, but the PPP features heavily. He forgot to say that 30 years almost of that period was controlled by PNC and now APNU AFC in that period. And so if there's going to be any movement in that regard, it must be launched by a black-led government. So he makes the case now for a black-led government, not a government based on merits, not a government based on policies, not a government based on care for people, not a government that will go out and look after the concerns of people. Or when the black farmers cry out to get help, they will take away their lands or the black vendors. But we must maintain a black-led government. And he said, yes, this government has not ordered the police to shoot down innocent African Guyanese or Guyanese in general. So the converse is that the PPP must have ordered the police, the black policemen or the commissioner of police and the head of the army to shoot down innocent black people. That was the order under the PPP. And now this government has not done that. And then African Guyanese must learn how to defend black governments. That is the tenure of his article, which is supposed to be the balancing act. There is no balance. It's racism. There is racism. These people, they have spent their lives making this an industry. They don't care about the future. They're in the sunset years. They're sunset years. Lincoln Lewis David Hines, Adam Harris, all of them are in their sunset years. They still have the old mentality. The young ones have to take back this country. And they can't help to define the future for us. It's pure racism being peddled here. Racism, pure racism. Let me make it clear. Afro-Guyanese made more progress under the PPP than under any PNC government. And I can show that with statistics in every single area. That's inconvenient to them. That's an inconvenient truth to them. So they'll try to cover that up, that people like David Hines. But that is the fact. And the fact is that we're working hard to make sure that our party is reflective of all the people of Guyana. No other party does this. No other party. So this is it. I'm going through this because these things get sneaked in, and the campaign, I see it again. So Adam Harris too. I too oppose the cybercrime bill. And then Adam Harris says he opposes the cybercrime bill because he's opposed to fake news. Imagine Adam Harris of the Kaichor News, who invented fake news in Guyana. He is so concerned. I'm so aggrieved by fake news. Look at every single day, they've invented stuff. So he is offended that somebody said Granger owned a property, a new house that and said Granger's like got the house and he can't explain how he got it. He's offended. He said Granger can't be corrupt, and nothing could be further from the truth. But this was the same Adam Harris who used to write about Jagdeo having air-conditioned kennels for dogs. I never had a dog in my life at my house, but I'm supposed to, in the Kaichor News, he used to write that I have air-conditioned kennels for dogs in Pradoville. This is the same Adam Harris, and how I own the Marriott. I own every gas station in the country. I own fleets of trawlers, blocks of apartment overseas, mansions overseas. I own an airline. This is the same Kaichor News. And offended by fake news. He's opposed it. And then he brings up the bench cup matter and the sedition. And between a government trying to criminalize free speech with what took place with bench cup. Bench cup, I had the CARICOM heads of government here. They led a mob. That mob invaded the office of the president. People were killed in the office of the president in the battle with the mob. And he was charged for sedition. He was then pardoned. Just imagine that happening in another part of this world, invading the White House compound or something. They would have been slaughtered probably now. They'd never come out of jail, the bench cop. Never come out of jail. He should be thanking the PPP every morning, go to church and say a prayer for the PPP, the bench cop. Rather than comparing that with this government trying to criminalize free speech and calling it seditious. It wasn't free speech he was charged for. It was his role in that activity. And we have short memories. And so that is it. And then Adam Harris concludes it. What is surprising is that the political opposition had supported the bill in its current form. We never supported no bill in the current form. They keep repeating this. The bill, we never supported any bill. I made it clear that the members who were supposed to attend the committee meeting, they did not attend when this was debated. They did not. And the elements. And so we didn't support it. It's if the PPP had stood up in the National Assembly and said, we supported it, that's a different issue. But I said clearly that that should not have happened. You can criticize us for not attending, but we will fight against the criminalization of free speech. And so this brings me to Cathy Hughes. Cathy Hughes suddenly says it's the civil society and the PPP who are to be blamed because they did not speak up against the provision. As though this government doesn't have the responsibility to originate legislation that protect our people, free speech, and that would be consistent with our Constitution. Absolve them of all the responsibility. So they bring a horrible bill to criminalize free speech, and because we didn't attend there to make the objection at the right time, we are to be blamed for it, and civil society. That is what Cathy, you said. And I want to see how Raphael Trotman will vote, because if Ramjatan succeeds in keeping it in, he already said to the media that he will vote against the bill. So it would be interesting. It would be very interesting. I know what will happen, but I'm leaving it for the meeting. So I thought I'd deal with some of these things because it's important we put the records straight on a lot of these matters. In all of these issues, you get our position being mischaracterized by a few people. And I suspect this is going to happen increasingly. The last time the elections, we did not do that enough. We didn't go and say that it was a lie that the Amila Fall would incur $2 billion of debt. We didn't say it was a lie that the electricity prices would go up, but that was in the Kaichor news, that it would have fallen by half. We didn't lay out our position strong enough, and now we're not going to allow anyone again to do this sort of thing, that is to mischaracterize what the PPP stands for or its public position. We'll make sure that we deal with it. I just end here.
Mr. Jagdeo, sir, on the credit extended from Bank of Guyana, can you say if the party or yourself you would be able to put a figure to that, just how much the government is to Bank of Guyana? And what is so wrong with the government using this cash since there is that excess liquidity in the system?
There's one. It's probably about $50 billion. About $50 billion. They're running down deposits. It could be more. The last figure I looked at. That's one. Two, the governments finance their operations through various sources. They finance their operations from either taxes, from loans, or from borrowing. Loans or from grants from abroad. That's how they finance their operation. In this case, we're financing a significant part of our operation from borrowing from the banking system. Now that, in the long run, will affect all of our debt profiles, and it is once you borrow from the domestic banking system and the central bank, it has implications. I don't want to go into all the implications, but for the macroeconomy, it has implications for macroeconomic management. So it's huge.
How long could that sustain?
Well, already we're at a stage where, why do you think the IMF is saying they urgently need to cover the balances? I pointed this out in budget time. I don't want to go back to a long explanation because it will take me a while.
On the raising of the debt ceiling, is it really fair to just come and say, oh, the government sneaked it in surreptitiously, I had left after the speech to finish the day? Because, it needed a motion to be introduced, and it could
Yes, our members were there, but that's it. At the last hour, that's what I meant when I said surreptitiously, because at the last hour, this was a members' day, private members' day. That's our day in Parliament. At the last hour, when I heard the speaker saying that concludes our business for the day, on our private members' day, they pushed that through. That is what I meant. They could have had another session of Parliament. In fact, they're not very, they just hold these sessions of Parliament very, very far apart because they don't want public scrutiny.
What was the debt ceiling before they raised it?
No, this is what they did. They removed the restriction. This one was raised only, it was raised in the past, but only for miler fall. To guarantee that payment. They removed that restriction, so any borrowing could now be facilitated under that ceiling. And I saw the head of the Parliamentary Association, right, the Commonwealth, saying that it warrants pursuing about how the police got into the Parliament. I think you should have that a probe should be held.
Or the samples?
Yes, yes. So why not ask the speaker if he plans to do that? Because he's part of a cover-up.
On David Hines, peddling racism and whatnot more, you would have responded to him on quite a few occasions, but there are persons like William Shaw, for example, who are at the opposite end of the same thing. You don't seem to be raising.
You show me an article that like this one, blatantly racist, like this one here, which says that you blames the PPP for everything under the sun. No, that's what I'm saying. That this one says from 1957 to 2015.
No, what I'm saying, you're saying David Hines is there spewing racism, and you're calling on whoever. But what I'm saying, there are perceived PPP supporters as well. They're spewing racism on the opposite end of the spectrum too.
How they're perceived? What do you mean by perceived PPP supporters? I made it clear. When you see Facebook posts that get into racism, no, I'm telling you about that. Ryan Shaw is now a member of our party. Ravi Dev is now a member of our party. But I've never seen them go to the depth of that David Hines and the others have gone to. Since when they, for example, blaming the PPP for even what took place in the PNC era. And it's it's crude. Now, if they said something about the APNU, and then APNU should defend that, their record. If Ravi Dev and Ryan Shaw says something that APNU is not happy with, this guy is trying to mischaracterize the PPP. It's people like them who try to prevent Afro-Guyanese from joining the PPP. Because of this all the time, the boogeyman. They used to tell people, that's why I pointed out that you have trapdoors in Freedom House to kill Afro-Guyanese. You can't go up to the 4th floor, all of that sort of stuff. There's stereotypes that exist. We have torture rooms because you know what they're worried about? That the day that this starts happening in numbers, and it is happening now, if they don't understand it, it is happening. More and more people are joining the party. We made it clear. Then there will be no place for them. They can't be parasitic on people anymore. These guys make a living from spewing hatred in this country. A living they make from doing that. They would have no relevance. They don't represent, as I said before, I was in PK and then Maburuma. I met with lots of Amerindians, but in the night talking to tons of Afro-Guyanese who live there. You ask them what if they share the sentiments of David Hines. They're very concerned. That's why when they hurriedly put together, they have this policy now, every place I go. So the day I landed in Letem, the Volden, a whole gang came there. And then the next thing is, I went to PK, a whole gang came in there. And I saw they put some public meeting on Facebook, not showing the crowd, the big man in action speaking, one of their people. And then when I walk past, there are 10 people there. If you don't see the crowd, you think a big meeting. And they'll come to tell these in Georgetown, we had a massive crowd. Nobody showed up to their meetings there, except in a few. So I was just talking to people in PK on the ground, Afro-Guyanese, about how their lives have changed for the worse under this government. When has he gone out there to talk to them? When has he gone out there? And he says he represents black empowerment. They don't care anything about ordinary people. They just live cushy. He and his family now feeding off of our taxpayers and making it seem that he is an analyst who is balanced, but he is part of stirring up, keeping people separated. And he says he comes from the WPA.
Mr. Jagdeo,
Yeah.
the short votes for the years. Two questions I have. The first would be, you mentioned earlier that COI is, the great COI that is an assault on our soldiers by the great government. Can you elaborate a bit on that? And also, as regarding local government structure in totality, do you think it is functioning effectively, especially in the area of City Hall?
Oh, City Hall is a basket case. Basket case. So they're gonna, but you know, they're now gone out to, so they're gonna start a new cleanup program. And this cleanup is geared towards local government elections. So, and then, as I said before, they're going around with some ministers, people from City Hall, telling people in different areas they have money for them to spend. So if the residents of Georgetown want their taxes increased, because that's what's happening. I pointed out how in New Amsterdam, they increased the rates and taxes by 100%. People voted for APNU, and they increased their taxes by 100%. We've made it clear anywhere the PPP wins, no increase in rates and taxes. No increase, because already people are suffering hardships. And we try to enforce that with our councillors. And so here in Georgetown, there's a very dangerous thing that they have just decided. The cabinet decided to do that countrywide valuation exercise. You can only do the valuation exercise for one purpose. That is to charge people more taxes on their properties. Countrywide valuation process, they've just hired a Canadian company to do. Yes, they announced it. And so that's why I'm saying people hear about it and it's benign. Sometimes it goes past us what the intent is. The only reason that you do that is to levy more taxes. So that's going to come down the line. We in the PPP, we don't believe that rates and taxes should be increased now, particularly now when people are struggling. And so City Hall is, as I said, dysfunctional. It is being allowed to do so. I think you're not going to have change there because a lot of the people in City Hall have very, very close relationship with people in the government and Congress Place. And so there is a constant money flow between them. And you look at the award of contracts. We talk about the national level. The media should just try to dig into how City Hall awards contracts and to whom. And people's ministers, drivers get big contracts, all sorts of stuff.
Mr. Jagdeo.
So that's one. And the Lindo Creek. Lindo Creek, from the very beginning, we knew it to be a political activity because Granger said he wanted to find out the truth about the trouble period that he called a trouble period. So we thought we'll get a comprehensive COI. Of course, he went and picked the part, not where you had the Lusignan massacre, the Bartica massacre, the one at Agricola, that Felix and Basil Williams were involved in trying to divert attention. But he went and picked Lindo Creek, where there was an accusation that it wasn't Feynman, it was the army who did it. So he is more concerned about clearing Feynman's name. That is his concern. He is clearing it. And I told you why. Because they were supporting him materially. And it was an embarrassment when they went and killed all the people there to them. And so the thing is that we look at how it's evolving. Now the chairman goes to visit and he says, they thought I couldn't make it here. Who they thought he couldn't make it there? Nobody knows about that he was even going. And then he says, he has not concluded as yet. He then says, there's a failure of government. He says in an interview, he hasn't concluded the hearing, there's a failure of government. He's already concluded, basically. The reports are written for him. This is all a sham. And then every time they report from the soldiers, all the soldiers are saying, here are the evidence. They went and questioned the people in private. The soldiers are not having a fair shake here. You look at what's going on. Consistent. And every time, every allegation or every view, I saw Newsroom, I think it was your story, said that the police pinned it on Feynman gang. Police pinned it after an investigation. The police, Newsroom said, the police pinned it on the Feynman gang. That's Newsroom story. The police didn't, that's concluding already. That's a conclusion. Police did it, they pinned it on him. And so this kind of thing, police and the army being tried every day, or soldiers and policemen, they serve the people of this country. When we had that crime wave, a lot of people were cowering in their homes. It was the soldiers and the policemen who had to go out and protect our people, hunt down these criminals, put their lives at risk. And now they're on trial because somebody in the family believes somebody tell him that it's the soldiers. No solid evidence, not a single shred of evidence so far. Not a shred of evidence to say it's the police and the army. Yet they're being dragged before, in a public fashion, dragged before a COI, damaging reputations, etc.
Clarification,
Yes.
you said Gwen is more concerned about clarifying, meaning they were supporting him materially.
Yes, I said that before, the PNC.
You also said you had videos of this.
PNC was supporting him materially. And I said that before, over and over. The PNC was supporting him materially.
The videos of
The police have all of those things. Police have a lot of stuff from the year. I don't know if Felix disappeared them, because Felix, given the conversation with Basil, because I wouldn't put it past Felix to get rid of everything.
Sir, the SARA appointments, I know they were supposed to go through a parliamentary committee. Was that ever done?
No, that was never done. That's what I was saying, that even after the bill was passed, one thought they would go through the a professional technical processes enshrined in the bill to appoint the head of the officers of SARA. They never did. So they carried the politicians over.
Can the PPP do anything at the level of the National Assembly to get them to come to the parliament?
I think we can just raise it, but they don't care. As though they care about anything. They put Retimaya or Hetimaya, which one is it? It's Retimiah, yes. Retimiah and Clive Thomas to do hatchet jobs on the PPP. That's it, all day long. They've concluded, and by the way, those statements they made before will come back to haunt them in public once it gets before the court. Anything they go to the court with. The public statements they've been making will come back to haunt them.
And the last thing for me, you mentioned that a lot of people have been joining the party. Could you give a number or percentage?
We don't tell the public how about our membership. Why would you, you don't want to do that? We never did that in the past. Who were joining the party? We were party members, yeah.
Just two questions.
Yes, yes, go ahead.
Paul Bailey, the acting CEO of Gaisuku, is saying that the board is not functioning. You know about the confusion. What would be your advice and recommendation?
Appoint the board. Appoint the board, that's advice.
But he claims that it's functioning well without the board.
Oh, really? Yeah. This Paul Bailey is out.
The second question, you made mention about the minister.
Well, don't appoint the board then. If it's functioning well, don't appoint the board. That's what the best thing would be.
Minister Patterson's brother being charged for trafficking cocaine. Are you concerned about that? Because we know ministers, family members of ministers have special privileges, especially traveling through the VIP and all of that.
Well,
do you have any concerns?
Well, this is where the government should launch a full investigation into. Since this is a clean government that doesn't tolerate drug dealing. But I remember when a former minister, Rashley Jackson, whose son was caught, he said, I saw in an interview actually he did, was with one of the newspapers, and he said, in the interview, he said it became untenable for him. He was giving an interview after the fact, years later, became untenable for him to continue, and he resigned. Yes.
You make reference to Rashley Jackson, and in this instance, should the substantive minister or official be responsible for the actions of a relative?
Well, Rashley Jackson said, that is what we're telling you, that he said that himself. And this was years later, in an interview, he said, became untenable. That is why I'm saying this minister has not called for his resignation. He has to decide, because apart from just family member, there has to be a full investigation whether the VIP lounge and the other areas were used in Guyana. Since they are so holier than thou, if this had happened with the PPP, the first, oh God, it would have been already, it was Jagdeo who gave the man the drug. That is, I love how this goes quietly. This happened since May 2nd, I gather. Since May 2nd. Only yesterday it came out here in Guyana. May 2nd, almost 3 weeks later. Had it been the PPP, the whole online media would have been highlighted in the paper that it had to be, see, evidence of PPP drug dealing. Just it. We have to also be fair. But this doesn't fit into the narrative.
No, what I wanted from you is what is your
it's for the government.
What is it that you want?
No, I was asked a question, and I just said an aside. This is for Patterson to decide and the president, but at least they should have a full investigation to see what's compromised. Not that is for him to decide whether he wants to. Rashley Jackson took a high moral ground. He took the high moral ground. There was nothing that said he had to. He took the high moral ground. So that's why I'm saying it was a personal decision there for him. But I haven't said that Patterson should resign. I believe he should resign for other things. But I believe that he's directly involved in. But this one, it's his brother, as you pointed out, it's his brother. But the point is still valid that was made, that was asked of me, whether the people were using the facilities at the airport. Was it helped through? Was he helped through?
Mr. Jagdeo, the minister at the Chronicle. This morning, the president said that he'll be meeting with the leader of the opposition to discuss the appointments of the Police Service Commission, for the Police Service Commission and the Public Service Commission. Have you received a formal invitation?
No, I've not. You have more information than I do. Thank you for sharing it.
And will you be willing to go if or when you?
Yeah, it's part of my constitutional duty. I have to do that. And I believe that I've been calling for the service commissions to be in place. Our policemen depend on it, or the judiciary depends on it, teachers, public servants. Those commissions are vital for, they have to be in place. So, and I'm part of the process. So we will do that.
Mr. Jagdeo, you said earlier the opposition is opposed to the parking meter project, and that the project should be restarted and all of that. Can you just...
Yes, I believe this is a corrupt, this one was not tender. I believe that the city has a right, and the councillors, to try to raise revenue. That they have a right to raise revenue. That I believe there are ways of raising revenue that is different than the one that the approach they've taken. They could either go back to a public tender, and a public tender will probably yield significant results for the city, for someone to operate the scheme, but at rates that are affordable to people. Or alternatively, do the simple thing, sell stickers as I had proposed. Sell stickers so people at $2,000 a month, and they put it on their cars and they can park anywhere in the city. And that will be easy to do administratively. If you don't have a sticker, you get pulled in. There's a fine. But every month you buy a sticker, you put it on the vehicle, and you park wherever in the city there is empty space. Thank you.
To be honest, and you stifle down to you.
Yeah, but because the precise